Well, now I want to talk about my first point, which is how to make sense of the value and limitations of the existing cultural histories of plastic. And the first thing to say about this is it remains sort of continually surprising to me how few cultural histories of this material there are. It's been such a revolutionary material, it has transformed the 20th century. And yet there are pretty scarce historical analysis of the early lives of plastic. But probably the most important historical account is Geoffrey Meikle's masterful book, American Plastic. And you'll see that it's subtitled A Cultural History. Now, in this book, Meikle develops an account of how this ubiquitous and protean material infiltrated virtually every aspect of social life. The book's really an exemplary analysis of transformations in the material every day. It traces how this synthetic material became implicated not only in the creation of new objects and devices, but also in the emergence of new cultural realities and practices. What's really great about American Plastic is that it offers an understanding of plastic before it became mundane, before it became ubiquitous, unnoticed, simply of this world. And this is a really great achievement. Now, there's two particular aspects of Meikle's argument that I want to just briefly review. First of all, his argument about the plastics age and the idea that plastic inaugurated a new time, a new era. So Meikle shows how the spread of plastic in the pre- and in the post-World War II period had to be made sense of. Explanations and accounts of this material had to be developed to justify it, to situate it in existing cultural frameworks. Now, these explanations were diverse and contradictory, but most of them revolved around the idea that we had now entered the plastic age, a remarkable new epoch that was transforming everything. We'd had the Bronze Age and the Stone Age, and now we were in the time of the plastic age. Now, this temporal orientation to the early accounts of plastic is really interesting and significant. It shows how new vistas of time were created through the material being seen as capable of displacing natural time and natural limits. This was a material that was praised as lasting forever. It was represented as physically and temporally limitless. However, the idea of the plastic age as a kind of utopian reality just around the corner presented other problems. How to actually get there? Through what mechanisms would this new social epoch arrive? Would it be just an existing evolution of existing material cultures where plastic was just substituted for current materials, where it was a replacement material and things would just unfold normally? Or was it a revolutionary material that would disrupt everything, industrial practices, ways of living, and have, quite a profound sense of upheaval and transformation? Now, there were many, many different answers to these questions. Sometimes plastic was framed as just another extractive industry drawing on coal reserves and part of the rising petrochemical culture. And in other times, in other places, it was hailed as a radically new material, triggering a dazzling array of new objects, practices, and experiences that had never been witnessed before. It was the material that was announcing to consumers who suddenly had this abundance of new cheap goods in front of them that modernity and mass consumption had arrived. Now, these diverse accounts of the plastic age show how new materials have to be mediated by existing cultural grammars, and also how they work to rematerialise and reconfigure these. So plastic gave time new meanings. And you can see now how that is happening again with the connection between plastic and the Anthropocene, the way in which plastic is being analysed as an anthropocenic marker, as an indicator of the deep time of the future. I'm not going to go there, but we are seeing a new temporal grammar emerging for plastic that's quite different to the earliest forms of temporal grammar that were developed in its first introduction. Now, the second thing that's really interesting about Meikle's book is he gives you some wonderful descriptions of first encounters with plastic. And they really foreground its shock effects, how radical and disruptive plastic was, how many new things entered the world. And these kind of accounts show you that the becoming mundane of something, the becoming ordinary and unnoticed, is actually a massive cultural achievement. We take all these plastic things for granted, but initially they were startling and new. Now, in the next slide, you'll read an account of Meikle's description of just the introduction of plastic packaging. And he just lists off a whole array of tiny little plastic objects that suddenly spread throughout the world, through supermarkets, into households, into garbage bins. And he just captures the extent and speed of this transformation. And he also shows you that plastic wasn't just substituting for previous materials, it was also provoking whole new sorts of objects that could never have been imagined before, such as the cheese stick. And it was also prompting the wrapping up of things that had never been considered as needing wrapping up. So it's a wonderful description of just a proliferation of plastic things and the emergence of a whole new set of objects and uses. And I'll leave you now to look at that and read the next slide.